To all of you, a very warm welcome to Viewpoint, where we try to unlock the secrets of successful people to help entrepreneurs with tools that you can apply on your journey towards running a successful business. I'm Jeremy Maggs, and in today's show, we're going to deal with the journey that begins your entrepreneurial idea until you finally take it to market. You show that product that you've developed to the world. We're talking about marketing. We're talking about development. We're talking about building prototypes. A couple of questions. Where do you start? What market research should you be doing? How do you need to do that market research? How to build the prototype, how to build the product, and eventually how to identify the customer, and most importantly, to sell it to the customer. Because why are you doing this? It's all to make money, to make a profit. We've got two guests today, and I would say to you that they are the perfect duo to take us along the entire course of this journey, or this value chain, or whatever we're going to call it, from ideation to marketing itself. I want to welcome Uyanda Manana. She has more than 15 years experience in the marketing industry, having worked on many major international brands. Now the managing director of the Conversation Lab agency. It's a full-service digital marketing agency. And joining her is Travis Maddocks, the product development manager of SafeLoad. It's a brand of the PIMS Group. What can I tell you about Travis? He is an industrial design engineer with a wealth of experience in designing product for aspiring entrepreneurs. I hope this is going to be a fascinating conversation. To both of you, a very warm welcome. Uyanda, I want to start with you, and I like the name of the agency,
yes,
the Conversation Lab. And maybe that leads me into my first question. What sort of conversations would you be having with people that enables them to get closer to their customers? What should they be thinking about?
So conversations, first of all, that their consumers are having. And I know it sounds very flippant or sometimes very complicated. So, well, where do I find my consumers? Where do I find their conversations? And that's the beauty of digital. It's going into your target audience's space, their pages. What are they looking for and how are they looking for it at every point of the funnel? So those are the conversations that we tend to have with our clients, is simplify it to what are the needs from awareness all the way down to sales, and what conversations are being had at every point.
And conversations are very organic. I mean, these change all the time, don't they? Depending on the needs and I guess the growth trajectory of a company.
Yeah. No, definitely. So, for instance, if you aren't in the market, if your consumer's not in the market or is unaware of your category or product, it's a completely different need state to when they suddenly identify, oh, actually, I've got a bit of a pain point here. Where do I start? Who's going to solve it for me? And that's where the search begins. And are they finding your brand in that conversation? And Google is no longer a search engine, it's the ask engine. And that and how we ask Google is very conversational. You know, you're not going to say, you know, what is the oil injection of a BMW or whatever. You're going to type in, what is the freaking fastest car I can find on the market? And then, am I going to find your brand?
You had to go to BMW, didn't you? Very quickly, and Travis, I'm going to get to you in just a second. But just give me the genesis of your organization, the Conversation Lab. Who are you, and what kind of work are you doing? What sort of brands do you work with? I think you've set us up for an interesting conversation.
Yes. So our belief, and I think it's true to say, marketing has changed so much. I mean, and it is because of the advent of digital and millennials. In that it's no longer just a one-sided conversation. It is very much not just about saying hello to your customers. It's how do we make sure they never say goodbye? And that is an ongoing process from your creative strategy to how you're going to communicate to them, to performance marketing. And performance marketing largely means when they go onto the digital space, are they finding your brand when they need it? And is your brand saying the right thing at the right time? So we do everything from creative strategy, creative developments, dev and tech. So we build websites, back end and front end, which was a completely new world for me as well. I know, but we're in that space as well. All the way to performance marketing, which is really the engine of how a brand survives within the digital space.
Travis, obviously you would come into this process a whole lot earlier, so you've been designing products for businesses and for entrepreneurs. Just let's start off with a little bit of your background. How do you fit into all of this?
So I studied industrial design back in the day. I won't give away any years. And just
You're just being kind to me now.
I didn't want to phone a friend. But I just, during school, I had a creative sort of background, a bit of flair in the art, but also engineering. And that's where the merging of the two comes together in industrial design, bringing a product to market, an idea to reality. And just slowly through the years, just the career has just morphed and followed where it needs to on the different sectors. We were speaking earlier about, obviously with the economic climates and how they change, it's interesting to see which sectors pick up and which drop. And then obviously those clients that come through and developing product for them. I've been part of a product design consultancy, for a long time now, and we've designed things for. You can name a sector, and we've designed a product for it.
So tell me something that's in my house that you designed.
Do you have a decoder?
I do.
More than likely designed that. Do you have a cooler box?
I do.
More than likely designed
this
that.
This man's accomplished.
Do you have a gas bry? More than likely designed that too.
So
or been part of the company that did.
So I think, and I speak for both of us now, I think I'm always in awe of people who develop an idea, but then are able to take that concept into an actual product. As an industrial designer then, is there a set protocol? Are there steps that you follow?
Yeah, there are definitely steps. And I was just saying to Uyanda earlier, we get projects that start off in different process or different steps of the process. From right in the beginning where it's just someone's idea through to someone who has an almost finished idea and they just need to now commercialize it. And it's such an interesting journey. No project is the same. And it's just, no day is boring. It really is great.
At what point would an organization like yours like to get into that value chain? I'm assuming the earlier the better.
The earlier the better. Yeah. The earlier the better. I think, as you said, you have different, when we were chatting earlier, different people who have different experiences, who come up with ideas and come speak to you, Travis. And oftentimes when you've got an idea, or at least some of the clients we work with, when they've got an idea, it's so exciting. They're so passionate about it, but it's in their space.
Yeah. It's just an idea.
It's just an idea.
Yeah. Or it's their passion.
And it's their passion.
Yeah.
Whereas where we come in is, okay, so why should your target audience care? Because that's where the rubber hits the road. Yeah. And it's critical for us to be part of that value proposition development, to go, okay, it sounds great, but actually, are you differentiated enough to whatever other proposition is out there within the category? And is it really what the consumers need and when they need it?
So you give a harsh reality check, but you have to do that without dampening down on the idea.
Absolutely.
It's almost a moral obligation, actually. So we work off, if we're designing something for a customer or even for ourselves, we need to work off of a brief. And a brief needs to be formulated for who's this product for, where is it being sold, for how much. The more research that is done, the tighter the brief, the more successful the product is going to become. And oftentimes, like you say, people focus on, I've got this great idea, and it's just them, and they fixate on that, and their eyes aren't open to the reality of actually what's out there, and they don't do the research or check, the fact check, the reality check that they need to. And we've seen some crazy stories.
So you're probably both going to throw a gas bry or a decoder at me, because I'm going to ask you both a very philosophical question. Travis, to you first, what actually makes one idea better than another?
Does it sell? Does it fulfill a need? And that's pretty much it. I mean, why develop a product? It's either to sell to make profit, for the business or the individual, or it's to fulfill a need, whether it's a community, environment,
So those high-flying entrepreneurs that are full of idealism and they want to change the world, that's a good thing. But they can't do that unless they've got a commercial philosophy or some commercial thinking behind them. Am I right?
Yeah. Look, I think the start point to any good idea or good product or service is it helping me? Is it sorting out some need or pain point? Do I need it? Does it make my life simpler? So at a functional level, it's got to function seamlessly, conveniently, affordably.
As you
so
said,
it's got to work.
Yeah.
And then it's about, and it goes back to the point I was making, how do we keep Uyanda coming back? So it's not just one conversation. It's, what's that next upsell, cross-sell? Yeah. And that's where you then can look at, okay, how's your idea helping? How's it going beyond the functionality? And that's where purpose becomes interesting. And linking or advocating with initiatives or other brands or communities within society that makes sense to link up with that product at a functional level.
So, Travis, what core information then, in your opinion, does a business need to know before they start on the next step of formulating the design into a product? If you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah,
there's the idea, there's a sense that it is going to meet the need, that the affordability studies have all been done, that kind of thing. What then, before you start spending money on developing the concept further?
Yeah, so they've got to understand, obviously, how the product is going to get made, because that determines your costing, right? So once they've got all of that, then they need to obviously formulate the brief of the product. Then they will have a consultation with a product design specialist, and then they will start asking the more in-depth questions. And there's a whole checklist to go through to make sure that they have thought of it.
Give us a taste.
Oh, goodness. Where is it going to be sold? Where's the product itself going to be placed? Is it outside? Is it in the elements? Is it in rain? Are there going to be things like diesel or oil that this product is going to be exposed to? Because all of these factors...
These are so obvious and so basic, but absolutely relevant.
And critically missed a lot of times. People are so excited by certain things.
As they surf the wave of idealism.
This white product, and it must be shiny and stuff. You're like, yeah, but if you're going into this particular sector, it's going to get dirty. It's going to get scratched and tarnished day one. Your product is going to look horrible. People are going to see that, and then that's the damage done there. So there's so many factors, and it's an inexhaustible list to go through. It's like I say, every product is different, and on each product, we even learning something.
But there's a basic template. To sum it up in one word, it would be efficiency and practicality. That's two words. Yeah.
What tests?
Yeah.
Is there a drop test? Is there IP ratings? So that's waterproofing and dustproofing. These sort of basic technical questions which help formulate a channel for us to start designing the product.
All right. So you were going to say something.
Sorry, I was just going to touch on what Travis was saying. So I think technology and the technicalities that you go through with product development speaks so beautifully to the brand experience as well. You touched on, it's beyond just the white box in the corner somewhere. You need to consider, is it going to rust? Is it going to break if you're leaving it in the elements? And that all ladders up to once your end user has bought that product, that's part of the experience. It not rusting, it not breaking down because of the elements, because you haven't considered that in your product development.
All right, so you use the words end user. I'm going to just replace that with customer.
Customer.
And I'm going to ask you, Uyanda, what at this point then, so we've gone beyond conceptualization, we've run through Travis's checklist. At what point then do you start thinking deeply about the customer, the journey, the experience, and where they fit in as far as that route to market is concerned?
The start point is just understanding need states, and it needn't be overly complicated. It's what is the need when your customer and consumer are suddenly aware that they are in need of a decoder. Where do they search? Search engines are one. So search engines are when you already decided I'm looking for something. Ask engines.
Not searching.
Ask engines. Yeah. But there's also a point before that where you may not even know that actually I need a decoder and I'm surfing Facebook or scrolling through Instagram and there's an ad for a decoder or a post for a decoder and it suddenly triggers something that then I go searching for. So it's just understanding in those different environments, what are my different needs when I'm in search for a decoder? And then what is it that then converts me to consideration? Okay, this is now my short list of potential decoders that I'm going to go for. Why are they going to choose your brand over another brand?
A little bit more particular or to home there would be something like toolboxes or storage boxes. And those are some of the products that we've designed and developed for ourselves. That becomes more of a, which one, this one or that one? How do I compare? Where do I buy this? Is it in-store? Is it online? And those are very pertinent questions. And what we find often along the design and development process is a person like Uyanda or their company would be involved later on, after the development cycle, which shouldn't really be the case. It should be in parallel or even from the very start. But what we do find is a lot of inventors or entrepreneurs sometimes don't have the budget to bring in all the experts at the very beginning.
Which is understandable.
Which is perfectly understandable. But then what happens is you don't get the project going from A to B. It'll go here, then it'll change direction as more information starts to, be revealed.
So hang on, this is really important. So the advice that I'm hearing from you then is, to the best of your ability as an entrepreneur, try to make the journey linear and get as many of those external experts on board as soon as possible, which also means managing budget.
It is, because the more information you get up front, the smoother your journey becomes. If you're starting to learn things along the way, you need to start backtracking. So you'd sort of be designing and developing a product, and we use 3D CAD systems, so we're modeling the components, to get to prototype, and you'll get to a certain stage, make the prototype, test it. People are like, oh no, but what about this? Now you have to redo that amount of work, go again, prototype, test. Okay, but what about that? Test, go back. So you're doing the first stage or third stage, whatever it is, 3 or 4 times. Yeah. Because maybe the information wasn't as thorough as it maybe could have been. The development game sometimes, unfortunately, isn't that linear. You do learn things along the way, but if you can get as much information up front as possible, obviously the better the process becomes, smoother and obviously within budget.
All right, so I'm running through the line a little quicker than I should, but otherwise we could spend weeks talking about this. And we need to get our product to market. At some point then, Uyanda, you've got to start thinking about product name. You've got to start thinking about price, packaging, and distribution. Again, I suspect you're going to tell me earlier rather than later.
Absolutely. And I think and it goes back again to being customer and consumer centric in developing your product, developing your idea, and developing your messaging. And that's the beauty of digital, is you can test and learn at quite a reasonable budgets. It's not back in the day where you have to get 10 people in a room, pay them, and you've only got 10 people in a room. Whereas with digital, you can test different messages and see what works.
Almost in real time.
In real time, and push different levers depending on what's working. And it's the same with your product name, your branding, anything really. So hone in on your target audience, and you can hyper target. It's beautiful. You can geolocate. If you only want to speak to people in Gauteng who are interested in horse riding on a Saturday, you can do that and be that hyper so that you can test your messaging without rolling out these big expensive ads or marketing campaigns without having learned anything from ultimately the people you want to buy your product.
Do you have to develop a prototype, or can you go straight to assembly?
You can go into manufacture, but usually at your own peril.
Yeah.
So, as best as you possibly can, you design all the errors out that you possibly can think of. But you're working on a screen, you're looking at the flat screen and you're checking out your product and you're turning it around and you're being thorough. A prototype will always show you things that you haven't seen. And we use it as gospel that if you do not 3D print, then your project is at your own risk. So it's literally a fail-safe, because what the prototype sort of proves, it's the last step before going into manufacture, the mold manufacture. So we use mold and tool or dies interchangeably. These are big, I'm going to oversimplify it now, big chunks of steel that literally would mold the plastic component. So if you think of an ice tray, for example, the negative shape produces the positive ice block. That's what the mold or the die is. Those are very expensive. For small components, probably like 80 grand, and we go up into 3, 4, 5, 10 million rand, depending on the size of the product, the complexity, etc. If you get that wrong, the product, your mold is going to be incorrect. And then there goes a lot of money to fix that. So prototypes are indispensable.
Can you work with prototype in the digital space, or do you need something more solid?
So in terms of testing the experience of, you can. Because ultimately, because you can ring fence the audience and the people you want to test, you can absolutely work with prototypes.
Yeah, so I mean, part of our organization is we've built up relationships with suppliers over the years who make the most unbelievable prototypes you can imagine. The quality is so high that it's almost even better than the final product sometimes. So a lot of our customers would use that for their promotional media while the mold is being created, because that can be anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks before you're actually getting product out. So it's also an invaluable marketing tool whilst waiting for the actual finished product.
So when you're in this phase and essentially you're starting to gauge user experience, what are you looking out for typically? Let's start from the conversation side, and then we can look at the changing and working on the physical attributes. Where would you be at? So you know where we are now in kind of the value chain. So prototypes developed. What are those conversations now that you're having? Then we're going to talk about actually getting it to market.
So I think
and fixing it possibly.
Yes, The beauty of testing the messaging while at prototype is that it helps you troubleshoot. Because part of the end brand experience is not only once your consumer has bought your product, it's when there is a problem. What is your response? And how is that going to reassure that customer to come back? So that's the beauty of testing before you've gone fully fledged and produced your product, is that you can test not only your brand messaging, but also when there are problems, because there will be.
Yeah. So oftentimes what we'll do is we'll make 2 variations of the same product. One, a practical test model prototype, and then one, a visual prototype. The visual we'll use to gauge the feel of the market. Hey, do you like this? Would you buy it? Is it too big, too heavy? What do you think of this rib over here? And then the practical side, that's where we actually do the physical testing of the product under a truck wheel, behind it. Can it carry the load? Because they're 2 very distinct facets that we need to investigate during the development process.
Travis, can I ask you, if you can, to be a little bit more practical? We're talking very much in the theoretical.
Sure.
Yeah. Mention a product where you've done this and how you've managed the pain points. Uyanda, I'll let you think about it because I'm putting the same question to you.
Sure.
We design, develop, manufacture wheel chocks, for example. Wheel chocks.
Okay.
It's a safety product.
Tell me what a wheel chock is.
A wheel chock is a safety item that has to go onto every single truck or commercial vehicle in the country, technically by law.
I think I've seen them on aeroplanes too. Yeah.
Aeroplanes too need to use them. If a truck is parked on a certain angle, you need to put a pair of wheel chocks behind it. In case the brakes fail, the wheel chocks can hold the truck at a certain angle and weight. You get different size wheel chocks for different, obviously, size trucks and different loads. We had to develop a very small wheel chock for a small commercial, like Bucky, for example. And we were good to go. We pulled the trigger on tooling. We had given the prototype over to someone to test, and they said, cool, shop, thumbs up, let's go. We manufactured the mold, we got it back, and they went out, and it was the wrong shape. It didn't fit the wheels. But guys, we gave a prototype. What happened? Oh, no. Okay, so school fees. We had to now redo the mold. So now we've developed a bigger wheel chock for a much bigger vehicle. So now what we've gone and done is we've made physical testable prototypes, and we've gone out there, we've done it ourselves now to go and do these tests and make sure that the configuration, the shape.
I want to know how the mistake was made and what you should have done.
So what happened then was the whole system was a little bit disconnected from, we had a design service, and then our customer went out and we took his word as gospel, or their word as gospel. So we had given the prototype over, and we had sort of imagined that they had tested everything, and they said, cool, off we go. We didn't do it ourselves. We weren't the experts at that stage. You, Mr. Customer, gave us the brief. We executed on said brief. There you go. This time, we've done it ourselves. We've tested, we've checked, we've gone and made the little videos, we've sat behind the vehicles, we've made sure the shape is correct. We're happy to pull the trigger now.
So the lesson I'm hearing for entrepreneurs is be a little bit more precise when it comes to dealing with the person who's going to make things for you.
Yeah, so you will be the expert in your particular, you, Jeremy, are the expert in that product. Yeah. You've got this idea, you know more about it than, say, me, for example. I need to extract as much information from you as possible in a certain regard, if I don't know the product. So I rely on you for that initial information. We can ask further questions to get more info, but ultimately the product is yours. You've seen the need or the gap. You've identified all the pain points, and that information is disseminated then to the designers or the developers from there.
Uyanda, what I'm hearing is it's interrogation. It's asking questions, but asking basic questions. Yeah. So in terms of user experience, what have you worked on where you can illustrate the pain point and how you dealt with it? Or the mistake and how you dealt with it?
Yeah, so just going back to using the opportunity to test before you fully develop the product. One of our clients manufactures hair extensions. And you'd be astounded at how many launches we have a year of new hair extension fiber, and it's all very different. The braids fiber is very different to the weave fiber, and it may work in the States and it doesn't work in South Africa because we have different climate or different taste or whatever. And so what we normally do in that scenario is we will produce a few samples and get hairstylists to test the fiber. So at that point, because with hair extensions, it's not really, it will end up on my head, but I'm reliant on the stylist. And so the experience starts with the stylist. So if the stylist is enjoying using that fiber to create my hairstyle, and I obviously then love the end product, the experience, the users are different, but the experience, again, needs to be seamless. So we do a lot of live testing, product testing with stylists of the products with that particular client. And that helps us develop not only the R&D or further develop the products, but the messaging. So if it's, this is actually smoother than the competitor to, when I'm braiding in the hair, or it really falls quite nicely on the shoulder or whatever. It builds into the experience that we'll develop around the brand from a proposition point
Travis,
of view.
And that's very interesting, because when we speak to a customer, we ask who's making the decision on this product. Is it a very technical product, like a fiber optics enclosure or something? So who's the person who's going to be working with the most? Who's going to benefit the most? Is it a technician, or is it the purchasing guy? Who are we actually looking at, simplifying their life or making their job a little bit more efficient. And oftentimes the person giving the brief sometimes is a little bit disconnected from the actual person who would benefit the most from their input. So the hair example is very interesting.
And then we have a client who's on the other end of the spectrum, and they. So can I ask you? Can I mention actual brand names?
Knock yourself out. Mention the brand. Fine. We're all here to learn, and we won't edit that out.
Can I actually mention my client? Yeah. So we have a legal tech client called LexisNexis, who are about to relaunch their brand. The product essentially is renovating. So they're different streams now, because it's not just speaking to the legal fraternity. It's broadly now speaking to anyone who's in business who's dealing with compliance and governance. There's a tech product for them, which puts them in a very different space to where they were before, which was very much about the legal fraternity, legal content, regulation, legislation, and what have you. So they're now in the tech space. The experience, however, when you're dealing with the sales team or the call center, is not where we're trying to go. So what we did is take a step back and go, okay, hang on. We need to audit the experience of when I click through on one of the LexisNexis ads, all the way through to the person who then picks up the phone to deal with my order or my query. Is that experience living up to this Uber tech space that we now want to occupy? And that's an existing
and seamless
brand.
And satisfying. Yeah.
Seamless and satisfying, exactly. And again, it needn't be an incredibly expensive exercise, because we can all pick up the phone and order something and go, okay, well, actually that was quite painful.
Okay, folks, we've looked at, in broad terms, ideation. I hate that word, but it's developing the idea. Then we've looked at prototype. Now we're ready for market. Yay. Okay. So first of all, Uyanda, very quickly, you would help take a product to market. You need to create demand. How then would you start that process, having done all the pre-testing? Just very briefly, in other words, you're lifting the curtain now, yeah? Okay.
So you've done all the pre-testing, you've spoken to your potential consumers, you've understood their need states, or what it is that they're actually wanting. And now it's about, okay, what is my ecosystem? And I'm going to stick to the digital space because it is the most efficient and probably quickest environment if you're an entrepreneur to create demand. And that's understanding the various platforms. So when you're in the social space, it's about creating that intrigue. So are you going to use a brand ambassador, an influencer? What is your ad going to be? Is it limited edition? How do you create that? And it's not even demand per se, it's awareness and intrigue. And the social pages play a role in terms of, showing our end user, showing our customers, our customers, these shiny, glossy things. And then they go into Google and do they find us? Do we rank? And that's where performance marketing comes in.
With the caveat that this doesn't have to be expensive.
No.
You've just got to market smart.
Yes,
You'd agree with that?
Exactly. I totally agree with you.
Okay.
It needn't, particularly if you're an entrepreneur, you've invested your everything, it's your budget. You can be very smart in the digital space in terms of testing and learning. And then once you've got identified your target audience with the right messages and the right time, you can then amplify and up your budget.
Now, while you're thinking about that, you're taking prototype into production. In other words, you've got to ramp things up.
That's right.
How is the entrepreneur thinking about that?
he just wants to sell. So that timeline that we've given of the mold or the dyes to be made,
another checklist coming. Yeah.
We've got a whole ideas to reality checklist on the website. So if you want to have a look there, you go download that thing and off you go. The tooling process is long. You can imagine it's a lot of steel that needs to be cut. So the entrepreneur there, he's sitting there chomping at the bit, waiting for this thing to be ready so he can start making product. Meanwhile, that's the perfect time to be ramping up his product launch. So it's trying to offset, that impatience with trying to, be busy with these things over here. And we can generate a lot of artwork. We've got actually quite a skilled team in our
I understand the impatience because they've also invested money and they are looking for a return now.
Yeah, and the issue with the development side of things, the design, the tooling and that, it's obviously all the pre-income, part of the life cycle. It's money out. All people really worry about is when they're going to start selling and getting their money in, because that's what they're looking to do. So anything before that is pressurized. Time, budget, quicker, faster. So it's an interesting space to play in because obviously the guy's excited. We're excited too. We can't wait to get this thing out there. But there obviously are some hurdles that need to be jumped. But how we can sort of alleviate that is we've got all our sort of services under one roof. So we do all our tooling and molding in-house. We've got our design in-house, prototyping in-house, manufacture in-house. So we often get the customers to come through and we walk them through the different stages of this production monster and say, this is where we're at now. This is where we need to get to. Here's the machine cutting your steel. When it's cut here, we'll go into the factory. This is how it produces. Then it goes into the packaging. So it gives the customer a little bit more understanding of the full cycle. So that's one of the amazing things that we're fortunate to be a part of now.
Folks, you were going to add to it, yeah?
It also, they're very different journeys that you take if you B2C or B2B. So, for instance, if your what was it, toolboxes are selling to other businesses, your strategy will be completely different to if you're selling hair pieces to a stylist and young people in Gauteng. Yeah. So, for instance, the B2B model it will be very reliant on. Your house needs to be in order before you even, is your website ready? Do you have branded content? Is your sales team ready?
Yep.
In terms of hitting those calls at the right time. And I suppose the same applies to B2C. Is your house in order before you go to the consumer? But I think the branded content side of things is very different to if you like, classic advertising for consumers.
Yeah, there's a lot of information that needs to get generated in the development process, particularly for that. And that's also where the entrepreneur needs to understand, is it a B2C product or B2B? And then is it an online marketed thing or is it actually in the store physical sample where you can pick it up, feel how heavy it is, how strong it is, how, next to its competitor. And that's something we've learned quite recently because we also pushed the whole digital side of things and the numbers weren't really picking up so much because it wasn't a product that you can actually gauge the differences between on digital. A toolbox, for example, you need to be at a company or at a shop and you pick up the different versions. You see, oh, this is flimsy. Yeah, this one is nice and strong and heavy. This one's going to last. I'll take that. So it's that hands-on tactile experience that sometimes can't be done away with, depending on the product.
Folks, I'm going to end our conversation with this. You talked about hurdles. I'm going to suggest to both of you that one of those hurdles in the journey is disappointment. Mm-hmm. Whether it's at the rejection phase of the idea, whether it's not getting the prototype right, whether it's taking it to market and not having queues form around the block. But I would also say to you, and Uyanda, you can start, that is part and parcel of any journey of an entrepreneur.
No, it certainly is. And sure, that disappointment can knock you sideways every ways. But it goes back to the test and learn approach. What didn't work? What didn't create those cues, around the corner? And then readjust, push a different lever. Let's go back to the drawing board. I think if provided the fundamental idea still makes sense and there is a market for it, and then you test and learn. You just optimize and come back.
I'll give you the final word, Travis. Test and learn, absolutely. And you've got to dig deep sometimes to do that. It's easy to give up.
It's not an easy game to be in. It's a long road. It can be a very expensive road. And unfortunately, sometimes it can be a very sad road in the end. It's not for everyone. It is a tough journey, but it's rewarding as well. To see that product that you've dreamed up, that you've fantasized about being in the stores, helping somebody out. And when that day comes, when you get that prototype for the first time, and this is the part that we love about sharing this journey with our customers, is when we go down to that factory floor and we show them their product for the first time, when they pick that thing up, their dream, their face, the elation on their face is just unreal. Yeah. And then, when they start selling it and then they come back for the next project. And the next project, and the next project, and you watch their company grow or their product lineup grow. That's cool, and that's the rewarding part. Doesn't always happen. It doesn't happen always right away.
Yeah,
but it can, and it's amazing to see.
And I would say to the entrepreneurs who are watching this conversation, understand the reality of your journey, but don't give up on the dream. To both of you, thank you very much for joining me on Viewpoint.
Cool.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great to be here.